Hey everybody, Coach Keith Kepner here, and I know I made a video talking about short fighter tactics and strategies. I had a lot of requests for tall fighters, so let's talk about tall fighters. By the way, guys, these long form videos, I designed them in a way that you can listen to them in your car while you run, go on a walk, whatever. It can help you to watch the stuff visually. But man, be doing your other stuff as well. Consume this content, have it run over and over in your brain, because repetition is the mother of skill. So you can just freaking click play on this video and go about your day and listen to all these concepts I'm talking about. I'm demonstrating it as far as, with my body and things like that, but also I'm verbally describing everything. So don't worry, you won't be left behind. Now, I'm not a tall fighter at all. If you know how high a lot of these normal ropes are in a ring, you can tell I'm only about 5'8", 5'8.5" on a good day. But here's what I can tell you. I'm going to teach you all the things that guys did that were tall that gave me trouble, and also all the things that I took from that, have worked with, and made tall, successful fighters. Because again, to be clear, that's what I think makes someone an okay coach, is that they can not only coach what they did, but also coach literally the antithesis of what they did. And granted, when we all start coaching, we all coach generally how we did it, right? And how, we were taught it. But then obviously, as you guys know, I know there's a lot of coaches that watch this that have decades of experience. Man, you start coaching more things, right? You work with more athletes. You double down on people's strengths that are way different than what your strengths were. All right. And again, in my opinion, that's what makes a decent coach. So let's talk about the keys to being a successful tall fighter from my experience and in my opinion. All right, guys. So first off, the theory of boxing as a tall person is the easiest theory. That's why, like I've mentioned in the short boxer video, why amateur programs and things like that in a lot of countries, they would select just tall, lanky guys, because if I have a 10-foot reach and I'm boxing a guy that's got a 5-foot reach, dude, I'm just going to crush you nonstop, man. If my arm is as long as a pole, it's going to be very hard to get anywhere near me if I know how to operate that correctly. So in theory, being a longer boxer is easier. So that can be helpful to just remember that, hey, if I just do just some of these basic things that Coach Keith is going to be talking about, I'm going to be successful. and remember, less is more. So I'm going to give you everything. I'm going to give you all the nuances, but less is more. Take one or two of the things, implement it, work it consistently. Don't try it one time. Do it at least 9 times in sparring before you make a determination of whether or not it works, all right? And make sure you stick around to the end of the video, because I'm going to give my extra bonus tip as far as your stance goes and where your position is, like I did with the short fighter video. That's something that you might not have heard of, you might not have thought of, or you might have forgot about, and man, it can frustrate the hell out of a shorter boxer that you're going against, all right? Again, I know it's frustrated me, and it's a game changer when I have some of my guys implement it at the right time. So make sure you stick around for that. I got 11 points for you, and then the 12th point is a bonus point. All right, so we're going to talk about the nuance of stance with a taller fighter. A taller fighter, how do you stand? You do peekaboo, style boxing, right? Like I talked about in the guard video. What do you do, right? Are you square, more sided up? With longer boxers, or with boxing in general, being sided up is typically better, and definitely with longer boxers, being sided up. So your feet are not on a tight rope. You see, if I'm boxing you, my right foot is slightly off to the side, but I am almost. And with the upper body, that's what really becomes important. Because if I'm like that, there's a lot of disadvantages as a tall guy and as a short guy and as a medium-sized guy. The more I can get like this, the more advantages that I have. So being sided up, right? Why being sided up? Most of you guys know, but it's going to give me more length on the jab. If I'm like this, a little bit open with the torso, here's my jab. The second I side up, I got a lot more length on my jab. And if you learn how to throw the jab from here, you'll actually get some more pop on it. Something about it leads to more power. I was just working on this with one of my guys that is taller. He's like 5'10"-ish at 125, so he's taller for that division. And man, his jab was just crushing it. And it reminded me, it's like, man, I remember when I worked on that for myself, just as a shorter guy, sided up, very sided up. People call it bladed. That's kind of more of a martial art term, and I'm cool with that term, whatever. But man, from here, you have that long jab, the most reach with it, the most power with it, and it's phenomenal. And now you might say, well, Coach Keith, why not be here and then turn on the jab? Turn on the jab. Yeah, that's fine for a single jab that's stationary. But again, as you guys know, I like doubles. I like triples. Singles are fine too. But also, let's take the least amount of time on that jab. If we're here, it's a little more time on the jab now versus there. Less time on the jab. And again, like I mentioned, there's less openings. Far less openings for me in this position. You only have my ribs here. It's very hard to get headshots, especially when you keep the length and you keep that arm out. And I'm going to go into some of the more nuances of that a little bit later. All right. Now, moving on to point number 2 is, as a taller boxer, and again, I assume you're taller and have kind of longer reach. Generally, that's the case. But number 2 point is get lower or get low, right? Don't get lower than the short guy, but get low. Get more to his eye level so he doesn't get his advantages of leverage, right? A short guy has an advantage in some ways because they're below you, so therefore they have more control, leverage. Also, as well, it can be hard to see things and they can come up with things. But if you can take that away from them by getting a little bit more to their level, either by bending the knees, maybe slightly spreading out the stance, and or combination, a little concaving of the body. You see a lot of great long fighters. One of the greatest light heavyweights in the history of boxing, Bob Foster, look him up. He's off like this a lot. He gave a lot of short guys a lot of trouble. Dick Tiger's one that comes to mind, knock him the hell out, right? When no one did that to Dick Tiger. So having that lower position, it's a game changer as far as leverage. Now you have maximal leverage. You're minimizing the bigger target that you are as a taller person. And also, this is the coolest part, is that I'm actually maximizing my reach, right? So if I'm trying to, let's say right here, okay, here's where my guy is. Or excuse me, let's say it's here. Because again, pretend I'm tall. So here's my guy right here. I have to be in a normal stance about there to get him. All right? I know I'm going extreme on my demonstration here, but just to show you. So that's where my fist is. Now, the second I drop down like I'm talking about, get a little bit lower, concave off the side, boom. I just gave myself an extra maybe 2 inches on my jab. And now it's going to be much harder for that shorter guy to do what a lot of shorter guys want to do, which is go up under your punches. If you're going down like this, shooting down, it's a little bit easier for him to go up under your punches. And also, by the nature of you shooting down, you're opening up your head more. But if you're throwing from here, just a little bit from here, you're able to hide a little bit better. You have more counters that are available, okay? You can touch somebody more. You might want to avoid it sometimes as a taller guy, but from here, you can get more of those straights to the body from the long range and things like that and have far more things available to you. Now, again, are you always going to be that? No. But generally, if you're going to be a little bit aggressive, and if you look at the best aggressive long guys, they're going to get a little bit more eye level with the guy by concaving, bending the knees a little bit, and that's going to allow them to do that safely versus up here coming forward or even standing your ground and being aggressive, all right? Taking a quick break from the video to say, make sure you wait till the end where I share my bonus tip number 12, where I talk about how you can use your position to keep your guy out and literally put a fence post in between you and them. All right, guys, back to the video. So those are the nuances on that. And that leads me to the third point, which is talking about range, right? We got to know our range as a shorter guy, but also as a taller guy becomes even more important. Because if you can master your range, then you are literally just closing off an area, keeping him right on the end of your punches, and it's all up to him to get past it. And if he can't figure out how to get past it, you just stay there all day. But you got to learn your range. And what I generally see guys have trouble with is they'll underestimate their range. As a shorter boxer and as a taller boxer, they'll think that they're T-Rex, like I joke about, and that's where their punches are, is from this range. So you have to learn on how to maximize the range, and I'm actually going to use the bag to demonstrate that and talk about that. All right, guys, so continuing just talking about range, but also just lending visual demonstration as I talk about it, how can you work on range? Also, note, remember as well, is that when you have more range on your shot, you're going to have more power on your shot, right? The longer something has to travel, you're going to have more power on it, right? If I have to hit you with something from 4 inches, it's not going to be as powerful as if it has opportunity to build up momentum. And that's where, again, you see Some of the massive power punchers in the history of boxing were long guys. Think about Sugar Ray Robinson, freaking boxer puncher, knocked people the hell out. And of course, Tommy Hearns and everyone else. You guys know all the names. But, man, you could be a long, skinny, lanky guy and throw punches at that maximum range and create devastating leverage and momentum on your punches. All right? Now, how can you work on range, though? Because you know the idea, but how can we work on it? This is where actually a bag does come into use a lot. So with the bag, though, one thing we always have problems with bags is we tend to want to hit the bag all the time. You as a taller person, I've talked about this in some of my fight study videos like Muhammad Ali and stuff like that. You as a longer guy, or even a shorter guy too, you need to practice not hitting the bag. You need to find out what your range is. So see what I got from that more sided up position, from being a little bit more down. See what the maximum extent of my punch is, what I can get, what's touching and what's punching through a little bit, and then what's missing. And therefore, you can visually, with your two eyes, because you have binocular vision, you're able to then see, therefore, and gauge, because a great fighter can gauge range. And range isn't only gauged by things like where their feet are, da-da-da-da-da. It's literally gauged by their eyes' ability to judge the distance of objects from them. So therefore, you get good at knowing what is the punch that's not going to make it at your full extension. The arm is not locking on the elbow joint, but it's stopped right before that. What's missing? And what is that touch that's going to be just touching, and what's going to be a little bit more through. And knowing what that range is and getting used to throwing and slightly missing that jab, because what I love about jabs like that is it's almost like a cobra striking at you, and it's concerning you. You're seeing that shot come out. And again, you see some of the greatest boxers in the history of boxing, they're throwing jabs with not always the intent to land the jab. Sometimes it does land because the guy chooses to come in at that time and run into the jab, but still, that sucker's flicking out there, snapping out there, and that's a deterrent, and it's also a rangefinder. Like Chuck Bodak talked about, it's a stick to a blind man or a cane to a blind man. So it's going to tell you your range. So therefore, how can you drill on the bag? Throw your jab on the bag and miss it, and do little steps in. Fine, okay, I just lightly touched it. Here, boom, I got just about my range. And if I got the jab, if the jab touches, this is where the cane to the blind man comes in. If that jab touches, I got my right hand if I rotate and if my back foot is with me, all right? If I don't have the jab, I'm probably not going to have the right hand. Know that about a hair off the target, right, about finger length, but about an inch off the target, if I rotate massively, and you could say, slightly extend even more, but almost go southpaw with the upper body with the right hand, you got a beautiful, long, ultra-powerful right hand. So just keep that in mind. But that's how you drill it. And then, of course, you could do it in sparring, too, where you're putting the jab out there, snapping, and then the second that guy comes into range now, you know what you got, right? Let's say you're flicking it, and you don't get it. You get that one. Oh, because you're building up these abilities and these habits of when that jab touches, the right hand comes steaming after it, or you come with another jab afterwards, whatever. But it is going to be integral to you being successful, in my opinion, as a long boxer. The more you can get used to that jab, pops the chin up, controls them, the right hand comes afterwards, that's basic boxing. And that's going to take you to a very, very high level. So now, let's move on to point number 4. We're going to talk about where our hands are. Okay, now again, you can put your hands in many places, and like I talked about in the guard video, you do things defensively. You put things in places defensively. But as far as your stance position with your hands, what do? Do you want to, like I alluded to earlier, be more here as a tall person? You want to be more out here? You want to be up here? Like, what do you want to do as a tall person? Generally, as a taller person, the hands are going to be a little bit more out in front of you, because that's essentially doing a few things. It's, one, decreasing the time of your punches, all right? So therefore now you cut off, let's say, a few inches at least of time that it takes for your punch to be delivered on the guy, right? That's one thing. Second thing is, as well, is that you're creating literally a fence of guard, of defense with those hands in this general area out in front a little bit more, that you can maintain the defensive line. And then once they get past the defensive line, then you got to bring it back home. But that's where generally, as a shorter fighter, generally, not always, but generally, again, all this is very nuanced, right? It's all dependent on situations. And anyone that tells you otherwise, I would not take their word for it, because boxing is a multi-variable sport with so many different circumstances. But generally, as a shorter guy, you get close. That's where the shorter guys generally have the guard a little bit closer, because they're in close, because those hooks are going to come around a little bit easier, things like that. Again, not that they don't ever want to be here for reasons, but generally when you get closer. But as a long guy, or if you're out of range or long range, you can be out here, stop shots from out here, and then also deliver the counters even faster. All right? So that's the advantages to that. You're literally building that fence. And the last thing I'll say about that, what's really cool, is that it can lie to your guy about the range. That's pretty cool, right? It can lie to your guy about the range. So he can think the range to make contact, if you're catching, blocking, say even brushing shots out here, he can think the range is here of touching you. But it's not the case. You drop your hands, he's punching right here. He's not punching through. So he thinks this is the range, and you can lure him into thinking this is the range by stopping shots that are here that would almost not even be hitting you. You almost are just doing overtime in the boxing ring. And you're not having to do all that work, because we're stopping shots out here, and that's cool. But then the second you want to counter something, bam, you can just shoot a shot. You don't have to even worry about it, because his range is established here versus here where your body is. Taking a quick break to say, if you appreciate this video, make sure you comment, like, and share. And if you really like it, some people have been giving me some awesome super thanks and all that other stuff. So leave me a tip. That'd be killer. Also, check out level 2 option that allows you to send me your sparring, training, and fighting footage. And I'm happy to give you tips to help you get to the next level. All right, guys, back to the video. Here we go to movement and our point number 5. Okay, I chunked these into some different sections. So with our movement, we got a stance. Now we're going to a movement. When moving, we do want to raise up back to neutral. Now I know what you're saying, man. Coach Keith, you're contradicting yourself. First you said I'm a boxer, I want to get lower if I'm taller. Now you're saying I want to raise back up to neutral. You know, your neutral stance, basic stance, slight knee bend, soft knees, a little concave, not super deep. Why? Because, guys, and I know this from working with a lot of different people and having people give me bad advice when I box. If you're bending deep, getting low, that's more of an aggressive position as a taller guy. That's going to be you either staying in one spot or being aggressive. If you want to get on your bicycle, move a little bit, be a little elusive, then this is going to be really hard to do. And it's really dumb to do. Now, I recommend, not that you can't get away with it, and it can be a tool to raise up high and things like that to avoid. Absolutely, but probably as a tall guy, you don't have that problem. I would say the only thing, as far as the advice I'm giving that you want to be careful about as a tall guy, is don't let it turn into, oh, the people are going to throw at me and I'm going to go down. Okay, that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying when people throw at you, drop down hard or anything and bring yourself right to where all their wheelhouse is. I'm talking about when you're being aggressive, getting eye level so you can maximize everything we talked about. And then when you're being elusive, come up to a neutral boxing stance so it's easier to move and you can do different things off of that, right? Versus trying to be down here, okay? So that's my main things I want to be clear about. Your movement's going to be far easier, and that's the time to do it, all right? When you're out of range, be neutral. But when you're aggressing attack, that's when getting down to eye level applies more, okay? Going on to 6, so with our movement, all right? So point number 6, with our movement, what do we want to do? Do we want to operate in straight lines as a tall guy? No, generally not. You don't want to operate in straight lines. You want to know how to operate in straight lines, here and there, but chances are you're pretty good at that anyway, just naturally, all right? And when someone attacks you, you probably have a great habit of going straight back. Well, that's not a great habit, doing it too much, right? What we want to focus on with our movement is circles and spirals. Circles and spirals, 2 shapes. The circle motion, so you are literally creating a circle with what you're doing. And then spirals, as a separate distinction to a circle, that I talk about because that's you getting further away from someone, right? So picture a ring here. I'm here moving in circles. I'm keeping this range. A spiral, though, I'm moving in a circular way, but I'm expanding my range, and then I can change that direction. I talk about that in the multi-jab video. So therefore, what happens with that is if someone's aggressing at us, we're not only avoiding laterally, but also moving backwards slightly at an angle. Makes it hard for them to attack us. And then we change directions, But with all this movement, remember, it's a cliche in boxing, but cliches are often true, or overstated things are often true. We want to avoid the corners. I don't even have corners in this video because I want you to avoid them that much. We all know why. Geometrically, it's a freaking tip of a triangle. It's going to be harder to move, and you have less places to move than if it's actually just along the ropes. So if you're going to end up somewhere on your spiral course, let's say, being a little bit evasive, keeping range, multi-jabs off to the side, etc., moving, I want you to make sure that if you touch something, it's going to be the rope somewhere in this area, away from the corners, not in the corners. All right? Don't make things hard on yourself. The shorter guy wants to get you in a corner if they're good. Let's avoid those corners altogether. I don't care if you're like, I'm going to bait him in here, all this other nonsense. No, just avoid it altogether. Get a great habit moving around in your boxing ring in your gym, or with four corners that you set up in your living room, moving around in a way that you're just subconsciously avoiding those corners as a longer guy, because you're going to want to basically always do it. That's one thing I can say for sure. All this stuff is very situationally dependent, but as a tall guy, I'm going to say, let's always avoid corners. Always. Okay? So if we do end up in a corner or on the rope, right, build that habit like I talked about in the footwork video of you feel that your calf touch the back rope, either spin off that rope or unload a combination or some nice hard shots. Don't lean back and launch yourself off the ropes. Sure, I know you've seen, I think, like Igmar Johansson do it and probably some other guys do it, but I remember I was sparring someone that was their thing. Their coach taught them they hit that rope and they let that momentum swing them back into a punch, and against a decent fighter, most of the time, they're probably going to see that coming. So don't make that habit. Keep your good balance. You touch that rope with the calf, bam. You shoot your right hand or a shot or a left hook, spin out, whatever, okay? Then also when you do touch that rope or you end up in a corner by accident, but again, you're not going to do that because you're going to practice this. You end up on the rope, throwing that combination, grabbing with an arm and turning, right? Swinging them so now they're there, and you get back in the middle of the ring, or controlling their head, literally like a matador. So reaching over with your right arm, left arm, on top of their head just for a moment, just to maneuver them over there. It's annoying. It sucks. I hate it as a shorter guy, but it's a very effective move because if you control the head, you control the body. Same thing, by the way, if they miss a punch, or if you miss a punch, rather. You shoot out a jab, they slip past it coming in, leave it out there, and use that to jockey them over to the rope, and then you get back where you want to be, where you have all of the ring. And that leads me to the last little thing on point number 7 is let's try to keep the center, all right? It's an easy way to demonstrate ring control as an amateur and even as a pro. Maintain, I know there's gyms probably still, but I know back in the old days that you'd have a circle sometimes in a lot of these amateur gyms in the middle of the ring, and they would talk about boxing either around the circle or boxing essentially in the circle. So you as a taller guy, just get on that mountaintop and just maintain that mountaintop. And wherever he goes, you just keep him there. And that's where you can get eye level. Keep him right at the end of your jab. Be like just snapping it out there like a deterrent. And if they want to get close enough, you catch them with the jab. And if you miss the right hand anyway, you know where they are based off the miss, and you come back with your other punches you got. But maintain that center, dominating the center of the ring. Very clear way to demonstrate ring control or ring generalship, which is a scoring criteria that is very important as an amateur because there's no draws and still relevant and important in pros and just any aspect of boxing. Okay, now going on point number 8, talking about movement. In and out movements. And that's where I teach, and through our coaching system and our Kepler boxing curriculum, we teach bringing the back foot with you on a jab because, again, that's something that's generally not natural. It's hard for people to do. People are pretty good at just stepping their left foot with their jab, and they're good at that. Bam. And that's where, so we work on being able to, boom, bring the back foot so you can get it up for other things like a left hook or to change movements, et cetera, because we want to build people that can do many things. But you as a taller guy, you can definitely capitalize and be very successful. And it's a move that you want to do, to just reach out a little bit with that lead foot as you jab and bring it right back. And your right foot just stays there, or vice versa if you're southpaw. But it's just here, and you're just stabbing. That's it, and everything you're doing, right off that. So therefore, you're always just going a slight few inches in, few inches out, and you're always going back to safety. and then just be ready for a quick lateral circle or spiral movement if he wants to advance on you, and you're good to go. Or heck, you just be also ready after you do that, stab, and you come back to neutral. If he does come in, hard shot, right? Hook, whatever it is. All right, so you do want to implement that as a longer fighter. As a shorter fighter, in my opinion, that's going to be your death sentence. Just stepping with your left foot as you're jabbing and not bringing your right foot, because you're always going to go back to ground zero and, out there in the killing fields. Okay, now let's talk about going into defense. So point number 9 with our defense. Let's talk about catching and blocking. I alluded to this earlier with stance, but one thing about getting more eye level and that concaving to the body, what automatically happens is, as an orthodox fighter, okay, and this, a lot of these things apply also for southpaw, but this particular as an orthodox fighter, your liver, which is one of the worst places to get hit, is definitely, if you're going to get hit on a side, I'd much rather get hit on my left side than my right side. The more you concave, the more you're hiding that automatically, all right? And so now you got less things. Even if you're a southpaw, yes, you have the liver up front, and that sucks, but it's not going to make you good or bad as a boxer. But the more concave you are, the more, or the less rather, you have to worry about protecting with the rear hand. You're minimizing the amount of protection, and then naturally, by being sided up, we can't hit people in the back. So you're giving them more, in a sense. You're not turning your back, but you're giving them more of just the back to hit as far as any type of punch that comes around, and any type of punch that's going to land scoring areas. You're hiding as much as you can within the rules of boxing to where you're not turning your back, right, which is illegal. Now, with blocking as well, like I alluded to, so we're catching our punches, right? We have our rear hand more in front generally as a longer person. You'll be more successful. Get the two off faster. But also as well, if it's any type of range, you can block a hook right, just bring it right to the side. You have to even bring it back if they're not ultra close. If they're doing a very long hook, you can stop it on the forearm just by going out to the side. Up here with the right hook style shot, it's very easy to do. And again, with those hands out a little bit more forward, like I talked about earlier, it's creating a false understanding of where you are. And so therefore, it allows you to be super safe, right? I would love for a guy that I box to always think that I'm half a foot closer than I actually am. So he's throwing all of his punches half a foot in front of me. That would be an excellent picture, man. I could probably be a world champion maybe if I could make guys think that I'm half a foot in front of it and that all their punches are thrown like that, man. I'd have the best defense in the history of boxing. So would you as well. So let's try to do that a little bit with that and stop shots before they break through the front door and they're all the way in your bedroom. Okay, now going on to talk about defense, point number 10, let's talk about head movement as a taller person, longer person. A lot of times we don't talk about head movement, and like 100%. You probably, as a longer fighter, head movement is going to be one of the lesser things that you focus on, but it doesn't mean you don't focus on it and you don't use it as a tool. Obviously, with head movement, just simply stepping back, in a sense, is head movement, or little pulls back, just a little lean back outside of a shot is going to be some of the most effective stuff you can do. I recommend being very careful, though, because so many people, I used to not teach anybody, even my guys with experience, to pull back out of shots because I felt like it was always going to pick their chin up. That was kind of how I was taught. But again, I know that you can be good and focus on bringing yourself back, pulling back, and keeping the chin down as you do so. Or getting a little step back with the back foot to make that little bit of range and keeping our chin down as we do so, because that's just the big trouble with the pullback is if you lean yourself past your base too much and do too often, then we get hit by shots like you've seen in many high-level fights. But then also, if you pull yourself back and also stay offline all the time, right? So you pull back and you stay on a line where they can close your eyes and shoot their shot, and they're going to hit you at some point if they just keep leaning for you. If you come off line with a slip, then you're even better. And that's where the next part comes in, is slipping. As a longer guy, you do want to slip. Slip to the rear side a little bit, pass a jab to uppercut, things like that. You can definitely do that as a long guy. Slip to the inside, do your shots. And typically, you're going to slip to the inside maybe of a jab to come over with a right cross or a rear cross, opposite stance, whatever, you know what I'm talking about. Or you're maybe slipping to the rear side to come up with a right hand shot. Beautiful stuff. Great stuff. And, just avoid going under shots generally. Again, you can do it sometimes, but just generally, it's not going to be something I recommend you focus on a lot. And with those hands, too, kind of running all the way back to the point talking about hands, but the last thing talking about defense in a sense is our hands can be lower as a taller guy, right? Because your opponent is there. Shots are coming up from there. So therefore, and also, where does the shorter guy want to go most of the time? Where's he going to be able to reach most of the time? The body. So you want to keep those hands there generally, and you can get them up a little bit even more easily than if you were the same height as somebody, all right? And then as a shorter boxer, oftentimes, I find it's better to have the hands just up a little bit sometimes, because it's going to cost us more time the lower we drop them to throw them. And then as well, when you move your head and stuff like that, a lot of us have habits when we weave under as a short guy, we'll drop our hands down as we weave under. So now when your shot is coming up from weaving under, it's going to be even more time to throw the punch versus if you can keep the hand up, almost sometimes slightly raise it up as you go under, not above your head, but just slightly up a little bit. So therefore, I find it can maybe take off that hair of a second, which can be beneficial for you as a boxer, all right? Again, I just can't help but give short guy tips as I give long guy tips, okay? And I'm sorry, short guys. I'm sorry. If I'm coaching a long guy, I want him to give you fits, but I personally, in my heart, it hurts me as a short guy. Then point number 11, before we get to our bonus tip, point 12, it goes into defense, but it mixes in the offense, all right? So point number 11 is miss and control. As a long guy, we're all taught basic boxing stuff, which is important. It's important to learn. Basic boxing, I'm all about the basics. That's 90% of what I teach. It's just going back to basics in different ways and doubling down on basics, right? Or finding a way to put that back into someone's game. But a basic thing we're all taught is put your punch out, bring it back quickly. As a taller boxer, as a shorter boxer, like most of the time, that's absolutely great advice, like absolutely. As a longer boxer, sometimes that's not great advice. You want to put that jab out sometimes, and if you missed your jab, you might want to leave it out there for a little bit. Why? It plays interference. It's a pole now in the way, but it's also, if they slip that shot, like I talked about earlier, if you're on the ropes, but even if you're in the middle of the ring, they slip that shot, you control them a little bit, just a little bit. You don't throw them. You don't do something illegal like I've seen a lot of guys do. I don't want to name names of this one big champion that you might know the name of that would literally judo throw people, it looked like. But you want to just control him a little bit, or at least destroy his vision with that, right? If we know that classic, Tommy Hearns knockout out Pepino Cuevas, where I think, if I remember correctly, the jab kind of missed, and Tommy came over with the right hand, and the jab was on the left side of Pepino's face, so it kind of blinded the right hand coming over. So that's the advantage. Also, just controlling the head, leaving that arm out. You miss a right hand, and if they're looking to slip your right hand and take your body off of that, or your rear hand, if you control them a little bit, it's going to be very hard to get that counter. They're not going to look as pretty. But if you try to snatch it back, it can play into what the shorter guy wants to do to you, all right? And then that also goes for landing punches too. You land a nice jab, a nice two on somebody, you can just leave it there for half a second. Don't give him the opportunity to counter. If he was looking to counter the two, even after you hit him, right? Because a good fighter gets hit by a shot and comes back with a shot typically. But if you leave it out there and you're longer, it's very hard. It's very hard. You could say theoretically almost impossible unless he gets that arm out of the way if that shot hit his face and stayed on his face. And then last thing with that as well is that hooks, let's say, you shoot your lead hook and he goes under your lead hook because he's going to weave under Mike Tyson style, come up, Joe Frazier style, get you. And he's there. Leave that forearm out there and just control him a little bit and you'll frustrate him, shut him down, go back to your work. Or off of that, uppercut, body shot, and then the key to make sure you don't infringe upon the rules of boxing, because I don't want to teach anyone to break the rules of boxing, because I really believe in the rules of boxing of the sport, honestly. Once you got that, you control for that half a second, leave that arm there, because there's no rules against like, oh, you got to snatch your arm back in X number of seconds, and then do your uppercut shot. Don't leave there and hold it and move his head into the uppercut. That's illegal. Don't do that. And again, if you train that crap all the time, you get a referee who doesn't like you, and that's your habit now, dude, he might just take a point right off the rip. Okay, but anyway, here, and then you remove it to hit it, right? Same thing with controlling the arm or controlling with the arm. He slips past the shot and you leave the arm out, control them, and then remove it to do your next punch. Okay, or even off of that control, you could rock a hook, right? And that's, again, kind of running back to the first earlier stuff. If I leave my lead arm out a little bit, there's no rule in boxing that says I have to have my arms X number of inches from my face or close to my face and body. So as long as the rule is in amateur boxing, I can't lock the elbow joint out. That's a post. So if I have a bend to my elbow, I can literally be like this as a taller guy, and that can be effective. That can be effective. If just from here, and you do a little step in like that, bam, snap the jab, right from here. That's something I work on with my guys, even shorter guys. Have that arm out a little bit, and right from there, you just pop, and you can get a jab that's very hard to see. It completely changes the timing on the punch, all right? And then also allows you to deflect shots from out here, create that barrier and fence and everything else, right? So I'm just going to keep on doubling down on that point. And then when they get close, you bring it back to defend yourself if they get through your gate and through your fence, all right? Now, here's the bonus point. Talking about fences, point number 12. Wouldn't it be great if you could basically put a fence post between you and your opponent, right? That'd be pretty nice. Or another way to think about it is like you're putting a moat, right? Sure, they can get over a moat. That's possible, but it's really freaking hard, right? Versus if you have an open field. So how can we do the same thing with our boxing, with our position, right? I've been talking a lot about hands. I talked a little bit about get lower, things like that. One way that I've had guys do it and have had guys do to me and seen a lot of different levels do, including the highest of the high levels, all right? Hey guys, according to my stats, most of you guys are not subscribed. So we passed 10,000 subscribers. I really appreciate your awesome support for that. But if you don't mind, check that real quick. Click the subscribe button. Click the bell for notifications. It's a great way to just lend some awesome support, and I really appreciate it. Now, back to the video. Even if you're same stance, sitting back on the back leg as a taller guy, right? Weights distributed back on the back leg, and putting out that lead leg, and being okay with being on a tightrope for that reason. Because what you're going to do is, let's say it's orthodox and orthodox, right? Orthodox person's going to have their foot, their left foot, a little bit to the inside of your lead foot, right? Just a little bit as far as relationally. So I'm going to get right on that tightrope because, again, I'm not trying to move in this situation. Okay, I'm just trying to maintain range. So you sit back, put that foot out there like that, put it out far, almost straighten the leg out. And again, you're tall, long, and lanky, and he is not. Right from here, now you have a foot out there that's right in the pathway. You don't do this off to the side, so now you're more open and available and less mobile. You're here, you got it right in the way of your foot. You point your foot off to the side, and you just have it here. That's a great way to just frustrate somebody, make them want to lean in with their shots, and then you can get shots that you want. So to mix that into your arsenal, I've seen it be very effective because now you got this foot out here, and it's like boxing an opposite stance fighter where sometimes you have to think about how to work around that foot when you're shorter. Now you're doing that to a guy that's the same stance as you, and obviously if he's opposite stance of you, it works even easier. But you can do that. Just completely be on that tightrope, leave that foot out there, lean back a little bit, and now he's stuck right at that barrier. And unless he can figure out a way to get around it, you're in good shape. And he'll start leaning for shots, having to think about it. And while he's thinking about that, you'll be on the path to victory. All right, guys, so that wraps it up for the video. Make sure you click like, make sure you click subscribe, make sure you comment below, and share this with someone, tall guy, that you think might benefit from this. I really appreciate all the awesome comments, questions, everything else we got in this video. By the way, also, I have to say I do love the super thanks in the super chat. So if you enjoy this, if you don't mind, leave me a little tip like that. That would be killer. I also have that level 2 option where I will review your sparring and training footage and fighting footage and give you the tips that might help you get to the next level. All right, guys, really appreciate you. See you on the next video.